Hey there everyone, Dr. Frunkey here, back with another knife discussion video. I want this video to be an extension of the last video I made about reasons to keep a knife or reasons to sell a knife. The topic of today's video is going to be knives that I've owned and sold, and why. There are a lot of great knives out there, and the market is rapidly expanding with new companies, new technologies, and new knives. All the time there are new things coming out, just like this WE knife 605. But as with any product, if you buy it and you use it for a little while, you might find a few problems with it, something you don't really like, and you just get rid of it. And then there are some things that you just want to keep forever. So before I get into the knives that I've sold, let me talk about some knives that I'm probably going to keep forever. Number one is just my favorite knife ever, and that is this 0392 BRN GLD by Zero Tolerance and Rick Hinderer. This knife, to me, is the epitome of the modern folding knife. I think this represents the very best of Zero Tolerance. I think this represents the very best of Rick Hinderer. And I think that this is an awesome knife. CTS 204P, titanium handles, anodized titanium hardware. It's just gorgeous, and it's functional, and it's smooth as butter. And it really doesn't get much better than this in terms of modern folding knives. And it works. It slices well, and it carries very nicely. Even though it's got this clip that kind of rides a little bit higher. It's not a deep carry clip like some of my other knives. It rides low enough to be subtle, and I really enjoy the weight and the tank-like nature of this knife. I don't think I would want something much heavier or bulkier than this. I'm not really into the Medfords and the Direwares and those types of knives, but I do enjoy a little heft to the knife, and I'll get into that a little bit later in my discussions. Another knife that I think I'm probably going to keep for maybe ever is this Spyderco Nirvana. I love Spyderco. You can see a bunch of reviews, including this one, on my channel. But I think this represents the absolute peak of Spyderco's knife-making prowess. Integral titanium handle here, one solid piece, S90V blade with a unique finish. Some people really like this knife. I love it. It fits my hand beautifully. It cuts well. Just using the knife and fondling the knife is out of control. That action is so much fun to flick out. Some people were really disappointed in the blade finish, the pivot, in the clip, and then a lot of people said that the lock stick was just the deal breaker for them. Now, mine, with a lot of TLC and a whole lot of graphite on the blade tang, doesn't really have any lock stick to speak of. Now, it's got a little lock friction. I can feel it disengage, whereas some of these other knives are just, they disengage with no sensation of sticking. I'm used to it. I enjoy it. I don't think that that's a deal breaker for me on this knife. Now, the lock stick did kind of come and go. It has its good days and bad days, but I kind of like it for that. It's got a sort of a personality of its own, and I really enjoy that knife. I don't see that one going anywhere for a long time. This is a Spyderco Paramilitary 2 in carbon fiber and M4 blade steel. I also did a review on this knife on my channel. Go ahead and check that one out for more information. I love the Paramilitary 2. The Paramilitary 2, for a lot of people, is sort of the gold standard of everyday carry knives. There is a small group of knives that kind of everyone uses as reference points. The Paramilitary, the Benchmade 940, the Reeve Sebenza, and a couple of others that represent sort of the benchmarks in the different classes. I really enjoy the materials that this is made out of with the carbon fiber and the M4 blade steel, and I'll discuss why I bought and sold a different version of the Paramilitary in the past, but intend to keep that one. Now, this knife right here I discussed in the last video with pros and cons. There are reasons that I might want to keep this knife. The S35V in blade steel, the unique grind, the green anodized titanium handles, the cool hardware, the nice clip, the ceramic ball bearings in the pivot, the ceramic ball bearing detent, the flipping action, The grips, where I can get my grip on everywhere here, even though I have a big hand and it's a 3-inch blade here. You know, a lot of reasons that I like this knife, but it's just, I don't think I'm falling in love with it in a way that I would keep it forever. So, if you are interested in the WE Knives 605i in green titanium, why don't you take a look over at eBay, where Dr. Frunkey is actively selling this exact knife. If you like what you see here, go ahead and take a look on eBay. I'm selling it for the price that I bought it for. I didn't raise the price, even though there are none of these knives currently available on any distributors that I can find. I don't want to gouge anyone. This is a wonderful knife, and for the right person, this might be the perfect knife. But for me, I think that this one is going to move on in favor of some new blades. So if you're interested in this one, go ahead and grab it on eBay. So let's get into some of the knives that I have had and sold, and let's talk about why I sold them. So one of the first, sort of modern EDC folders that I purchased was the Benchmade 940-1. I had, in my early days of learning about everyday carry knives, learned a lot about the 940 in green aluminum with the purple back spine and the S30V blade. I wasn't a huge fan of the green handles and the purple backspacer thing. Just didn't really appeal to me, and so I just put off buying one for a long time, even though I knew it was well respected. But when they came out with the S90V carbon fiber version, I knew immediately that that's the one that I wanted. So I bought it right away, and it was a nice knife. It was cool to look at. It was very well built. You could feel the quality in it. The blade cut very nicely, but there were some major issues that I had with the knife, and there were some reasons that ended up making me sell it. I think that number one is that it was just a little bit too small for me. Now, it's not a particularly short knife. I could get my whole hand around the handle, but it was narrow, and in a big hand like mine, it kind of disappeared. I never really felt like I had a solid grip on the knife because of the size of it in my hand, and the ergonomics were such that you hold it way far back here, and they didn't have a nice way to get up on the blade for me. Now, you could choke up on this little ramp right here, but it's not very safe. And so, because of the ergonomics for me and my hands, I ended up selling it. Now, they've made what I call the larger 940 in releasing the 928 Osborne. I have yet to hold that. That knife doesn't really appeal to me because it's got the G10 as sort of a structural component, sort of like Strider's. I don't really like how the titanium frame is like screwed into the G10. For whatever reason, I just feel like that's not going to be the most reliable setup, so I don't see myself picking that knife up. But I sold that 940 for ergonomic reasons, and we'll move on to the next one here. This is the Spidercoat Domino. I apologize for the black and white photos. It's just my printer is black and white, and I'm doing this kind of low-tech today, guys. So this was the Spidercoat Domino in blue twill carbon fiber. I've actually owned the blue twill and the red twill at this point, and I've sold both of them. I think that the Domino is very, very, very nearly the very most perfect everyday carry knife. The blade is really well done. It's a perfect grind. I like it better, maybe even than some of the others that they make. I love XHP steel. I loved the flicking action, the flipping action. I loved the feel of the titanium. But there were a couple of glaring things that made me want to get rid of the knife. Number one, it was a little bit frilly. I don't know how to say that, but the blue carbon fiber and the red carbon fiber was a little bit too flashy, you know, says the guy who carries around the brown and gold knife all the time. I feel, though, that this is a little bit more subtle in that it's a piece of brown metal. It's a little bit, it hides away in the hand with the natural colors. This bright blue and bright red were kind of attention grabbers, and I kind of want things to be a little bit more subtle. But the main reason that I sold the Domino twice, and it was for the exact same reason, was this handle scale. I've said it in my other videos, and I'll say it again. This peel ply carbon fiber, where it's a laminated piece of carbon fiber on top of a scale of G10, is just unacceptable to me. At $200, I don't want a sticker on my knife. It feels and looks and seems like a sticker on a piece of plastic. I'm not a huge fan of G10 to begin with, so I would have loved to see this knife with a naked piece of titanium in the sense of like the Mantra or some of the other knives that they offer in bared titanium, or I would have loved to see them do a nice real carbon fiber scale, just like on the Rubicon or on this Paramilitary 2, where they have these nice pieces of carbon fiber. Spyderco knows how to make carbon fiber handles, and I don't understand why on a $200 knife they use that cheap peel-ply carbon fiber stuff. That absolutely killed the knife for me 2 times. I wanted to love it. I wanted to keep it forever, but every time I felt it and looked at it, I knew that that was fake, and I felt fake, and I sold it. So that was the Spidercoat Domino and why I sold it. The next knife here is going to be the Zero Tolerance, or ZT0808. Now, this is a little bit of a preview in the sense that I have one of these coming in right now. It's actually going to be a limited edition. You can check it out over on Smoky Mountain Knife Works, the Molon Labe edition in the oil-rubbed bronze finish. It looks really cool. I'm going to do a little customization work on it in a video coming up, and so I hope you guys enjoy that. But I had the 0808. This knife actually replaced that original Domino in blue twill because it was a smaller knife like the Domino, but it was a little bit beefier in the hand. It was a little bit nicer than the 940-1 because of the solid metal construction to me. I like the sort of plain design on it. I love the blade shape. It was very functional and very well built and strong. The reason that I sold the ZT0808 was, again, a personal thing. I had a lot of difficulty opening this knife. My hands are big enough that when I would put my hands on it to flip the knife open, I would apply some pressure to the lock bar. Now, in some knives, that doesn't matter. So if I press on this lock bar with my middle finger here and then try to open this, it still opens. It's got a little bit of resistance, but it still opens. And I was pushing down on that really hard. If I apply a light pressure, there's nothing. There's no difference. If I even breathed the wrong way on this lock bar, this knife would not open without me destroying my fingertip. I bruised the hell out of myself. It hurt really bad, and about half of the time, that's what happened. The flipper tab was so small that I couldn't really get a whole lot of traction to push that thing open, so it got stuck a lot, and that frustrated me to no end, so I ended up selling it. I'm hoping that with the new model and maybe a couple of customizations, I can get it into a situation where it is nice and smooth and functions for me in my hand, and it should do just fine. I really like the knife, and I'm hopeful that the new model will stay in my collection for a while. Another knife that I bought and sold was the Paramilitary 2 in the S110V and Blurple handle scales. Again, sorry for the black and white, guys, but I didn't have a Paramilitary before this knife came out. I had wanted to get one, but I had felt that the Paramilitary was a little bit basic in the black G10 and the S30V. I felt that in, the late, in these 2014, 15, 16, we've come a long way with materials and metals and things, and I think that it just needed a refresh. I know that there are some sprint runs, but I hadn't gotten in on any of those. So when this came out, I picked it up immediately. I actually had this fairly early in the life cycle. I had it almost a year ago. I got probably the first batch on one of these sites and enjoyed it. And I liked the knife, and I found that I love the Paramilitary 2 as a knife. Functions beautifully, and I love, love, love my carbon fiber M4 version. I think that this is the perfected version of the Paramilitary in carbon fiber, at least for my uses. Again, the main reason that I ended up selling this knife was the handle. I didn't really ever fall in love with the blurple color. I think that a lot of people try to act like they're neutral about it, but I really think most people don't really like that color. I think that they'd be happier in the foliage green or a black or something like that. Something that's a little bit more utilitarian and not so bright, again, and so flashy like a bright blue. So that ended up being the deal breaker. I think I'm also just not a fan of G10. Some guys out there swear by it. They only buy G10 knives. They love it. But I really strongly prefer the feel of a bare titanium handle. I really like that. And if I'm going to go for sort of the plastic feel, I would much rather it be carbon fiber if that's an option, and true carbon fiber. This is leaps and bounds beyond what G10 is in terms of material science and strength. So I really enjoyed that. But that is why I sold the Blurple S110V Paramilitary. Paramilitary is a great knife, and I got a new one, but I didn't like that purple. The next knife I sold was the ZT0095BW. I picked this up right as soon as I saw the first pictures of it from the ZT lineup. It has a lot of things that I love about knives. The bare titanium handle, simple construction with a large pivot and then a single large screw back here. Simple construction, easy to clean and maintain. It had a great blade with a nice belly, cut really well, great slicer, very thinly ground blade, super nice. The flipping action and the closing action are second to none. This may have been the smoothest knife ever right here, just unbelievably smooth once it was worn in. The reasons that I sold this knife: it was a little bit too big for me. They packed, the handle was a bit longer than the blade. It ended up kind of carrying a little bit awkwardly for me because it's so narrow here, and I carry tip up on everything, and it's a bit wide back here with the flipper. The way that I carry it in the waistline, this wide part would kind of stick out, and it actually cut a hole in my scrub pants one day, and I realized, over time, the shape and the ergonomics of this particular knife were not for me. Again, on most of these knives, I really don't have any fault in terms of the construction or the function. It's more of this was a personal ergonomic choice for me. So this is an awesome knife, but it didn't work very well for me. And so in order to sort of keep going, find knives that I would carry more frequently, I ended up selling it in favor of some other blades. Another knife that I had and sold was the CRKT No Time Off. This is a knife designed by Flavio Icoma. It was ran on the IKBS bearing system that he developed. It had a BD1 steel blade. I had the partial serrations on it. It was a liner lock with stainless steel liners. It had some of the things that I didn't like about it and the reasons I ended up selling it. Number one, plastic scale, just straight plastic. I didn't enjoy it. It never felt nice. They had this weird thing on the handle that I don't think anyone actually knows what it's for. Nothing goes on here. It doesn't clip to anything. I have no earthly idea why that's there. And the aesthetics of it it's awful. Secondarily, it had a silly safety lock mechanism. They called it the Icoma safety lock or something like that, where you had to pull down on this thing to be able to disengage this piece of metal and disengage the liner lock. That was no big deal in terms of, once you got used to it, but it was an annoyance every time you used it. And at the end of the day, this thing just didn't really please me very much, and so I ended up selling it. Somebody out there picked it up rather quickly, quicker than some of these other knives that I've put up for sale that are maybe quote-unquote more desirable, but that one went quickly. Another knife that I had and sold was a Chris Reeve Sebenza. I think everyone who's serious about knife collecting should have or does have a Sebenza in their collection. I bought one fairly early on. I went for the Sebenza 25. Again, I really like to find the most up-to-date, most advanced knives in whatever category, and I like to see how the technology has come forward. Now, I understand that the pivot is not as smooth as the 21, and so my opinion may be a bit biased here. I loved the Sebenza 25 carbon fiber. This was from knifeart.com. I sent it to Chris Reeve. I had it switched out from the blue thumb stud to the regular silver titanium. It looked awesome, very clean look throughout. The problem that I ended up having with it was that I have other knives now that are simply more fun to use. This knife it uses Chris Reeve's, frame lock, integral lock type technology, but it runs on bearings, and it's got a flipper, and it's made out of brown titanium with gold accents. I mean, this is just a lot of fun. There's a lot of cool stuff going on here. The Nirvana, I say, is a fairly close comparison to a Sebenza, a 3.6 versus a 3.75 inch blade, integral frame lock without a filler tab there. I think that these are fairly similar knives in a lot of senses, but I would carry this one any day over the Sebenza because this one is just more fun. It's even more technologically advanced. I feel like the Sebenza, and a lot of people are going to hate on me for this, is kind of stuck in the Stone Age in terms of knives. I think that at a certain point it represented the maximum technology available for knives, and it was smooth and awesome. But as knives get better and better, as we get ceramic ball bearing pivots and titanium handles coming out of China, I mean, this is an S35 VN knife. This is a titanium frame lock from China. It's close to half the price, maybe not half the price, but maybe it's 2/3 of the price of a Sebenza, and it's got a lot newer technologies, and it's still a lot more fun to have and to hold. So I used the Sebenza for a long time. It cut really well. It was a nice talking piece, but I think that over time I ended up carrying a lot of other knives more because they were more pleasurable to do that, and so I ended up selling this knife as well. I wish that they would create a Chris Reeve folding knife on bearings, maybe put a flipper in there. I think that this knife, if it had a flipper, would have been awesome. Other people are going to argue with me on that, but I think that Chris Reeve needs to make a modern folder that's up to the state of the art at this point. They just released the Nkosi a little while ago, but all the Nkosi is a 25 with a bigger washer on the pivot. I don't understand why they call that a new knife. It's not. Just call it a 25 plus, like the iPhones or whatever. Makes no sense to me. I wish that they had gone with a ball bearing pivot. I wish that they had changed it up a little bit more than they had. So anyways, those are my thoughts, and that is why I didn't keep my Sebenza. I think there are newer and better knives that are out there. Another knife that I sold recently was the Boker Excalibur one. I had the burled maple version with the blue titanium frame lock, liner lock, the 440C blade, steel. This knife I bought sort of early on in my collecting. It wasn't ultra expensive like some of these others, but this one ended up being my gentleman's carry. It was classy looking with the wood handle and the satin finish on the blade. It was very handsome. It was lightweight, so I carried it around in my suit a lot. I carried it around when I wore nice slacks. And I would use it in sort of like classier settings where people wouldn't be threatened. It was more of a traditional opening. It didn't open snappy fast and scare people. It doesn't look overly tactical. So I really liked that about it. The wood handles were beautiful and felt amazing in the hand. And I ended up selling it because I really only carried that knife in that sense as my sort of gentleman's folder, my lightweight folder. And that ended up being rarely, it was maybe once a month. It was maybe less than that even. And I wanted some extra money to keep my rotation going and maybe pick up a knife that I could use in that same sort of function, but then also carry it more regularly. Now I think that this carbon fiber paramilitary has kind of fallen into that role. It's very lightweight, carries well in lighter fabrics, and it's a little bit less threatening than some of the other ones. But I hope that this buyer is enjoying this knife. It was a beautiful, beautiful knife. Little side story there, when I had it, the first one I got had horrible lock stick to the point that I had to use a screwdriver to open it by prying it open. I sent it back to Boker USA. They replaced it within a couple of days with a brand new knife. Props to Boker customer service. They don't make the best knives, but if you get a bad one, they might switch it out for a good one quickly. So that was the Boker Excalibur. The last knife I'm going to discuss today is the ZT-0392 Wharncliffe. And you may be like, what? You have the 0392. You just told me it's your favorite knife ever. why would you sell the Wharncliffe version? That's the coolest one of all, right? Well, in a certain sense, yes. It's the most unique in the sense that it's got that Wharncliffe blade. But I found after carrying it for a little while that I strongly prefer the belly of the drop point blade in terms of functionality. I didn't really like the super sharp tip on this knife. I just felt that the Wharncliffe style blade doesn't slice as nicely as this slicer grind that they've got on here. And just having two 0392s was a little bit excessive. I'm not going to be a hoarder. I wanted somebody else to enjoy it. I thought that the Type 2 anodized titanium handle and the copper accent were awesome and very good looking. The action was smooth as silk. I had no complaints about the knife functionally, but for my EDC, I didn't really want to carry it as much because of the blade shape, so I just ended up selling this knife to a good friend of mine in Greece. Look out on the Nick Shabazz channel for a review on this exact knife that I had. I sent it to him. He just got it yesterday. He's going to carry it for a while and then give us his thoughts. I absolutely love the 0392 lineup. This may not be the most representative of the whole lineup. I'm curious to see what he thinks. I thought it was a phenomenal knife. My friend in Greece is going to love this knife. It is just awesome. But because I had two, because of the Wharncliffe style blade, I didn't keep it. Now, that's going to wrap up my video for today. In the discussion, I would love to hear you guys talk about some of the knives that you've had and you've sold, and some of the reasons why you might have sold them, and maybe some of the keeper knives that you've got in your collection. You know, things that you really enjoy, things that will stay in your collection forever, and, you know, tell me what you think of my videos. I'd love to hear some comments and everything, so if you like what you're seeing, click like or subscribe, and I hope that we can keep having these discussions. I have some more knives incoming. I have about 3 new knives that should be here in the next week, so look out for some new review videos coming your way on the Dr. Frunkey channel. As always, guys, thank you for watching, and take care.